I've just spotted it's just turned 1 o'clock. So if you can put phones on silent or switch them off. Membership of the committee, everything looks okay today. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we pass them as a correct record? Thank you. Any interests or lobbying? I'll start with Councillor Kane.
None, Chair.
Councillor Sokol. Councillor Patterson.
None, Chair.
Councillor Binnett.
None, Chair.
Councillor Firth.
No lobbying, no. I have an interesting application. 2018 93372.
Councillor Goodwin. Any interest? No. And I've no interest either.
Can we just confirm your interest, please, Councillor Firth, for that item?
Sorry?
Confirm your interest. What is your interest?
Ward councillor. I've just other and ward councillor, that's all.
But have you been involved in been lobbied or
No, there's nobody lobbied me at all, no.
do you know the applicants or
No, no.
I don't
I try not to speak to applicants.
Item 4, this is a meeting done in public. One thing I will mention, we've had some papers released to us this morning. We may need to go into private session at some time if you so want to. Item 5, any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Number 6, deputations or petitions.
None received.
Right, site visit. Number 7, we went to the Houseway at Bradley, then on to Low Mill Lane, Ravensthorpe. Now we move on to the exciting bit. Item 9, planning applications. First one to the Houseway, Bradley. David.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for full planning permission for a residential development of 105 dwellings. The applicant is the council. The site is currently used for the grazing of horses and has no buildings upon it. It slopes downhill from north to south. The site is not in a conservation area. There are no listed buildings immediately adjacent to the site, and there are no protected trees within the site. No public rights of way cross the site. As seen from this morning's site visit, some views from Tithe House Way. Eastwards, here are some properties on Bradley Road. Another view of Tithe House Way. And another view of Tithe House Way. This is a view southwards towards the existing properties on Bradley Road. Sorry, it's north. Site comprises 3.87 hectares of the wider HS11 site allocation, which covers 68.34 hectares and is allocated for housing. 1,460 dwellings, plus a further 498 dwellings beyond the plan period are anticipated for the wider site, along with a 2-form entry primary school and a 9-hole golf course, driving range and 3G pitches. The application site was previously allocated for housing and a new school in the UDP under site allocation H839. This is not therefore a recent Greenbelt release site. The site has been allocated for development for at least 20 years. Site allocation HS11 requires the preparation of a master plan for the wider site, and a master plan was indeed prepared in 2016 to inform the local plan examination in public. This master planning work is continuing. The council, as applicant, has commissioned consultants to advise on the infrastructure needs of the wider site, and the council, as local planning authority, has invited the owner of the Bradley Villa farm site to work with the council in producing an updated master plan. The 2016 master plan indicatively showed housing at the east end of the wider site of at Tithe House Way, where the current application site is. Tithe House Way would be one of 4, possibly 5 key vehicular entrances to the wider site. For the borough's strategic sites, although further master planning work would normally be required before a planning application for part of the site is considered, in this case it is considered that the current application can be progressed without that further master planning work being done. Given the previous UDP site allocation, the indicative proposals for housing at this part of the wider site in the 2016 master plan and the limited constraints that apply to the application site. Proposals involve the construction of 2 clusters of development either side of a new east-west spine road, which is there where the cursor is. Each cluster would have 2 garden courts. The east-west spine road would connect Tithe House Way to the site's western boundary, facilitating future development of the wider site. East-west roads are also proposed to the north and to the south of the site, and a future connection to the Cooper Bridge Relief Road is allowed for at the northeast corner of the site. Of the 105 dwellings, 25 would be 1 and 2 bedroom flats. The flats would be provided in 3 blocks along the spine road, and dwellings will be detached, semi-detached or provided in short terraces. 25 affordable dwellings are proposed in the form of 1 and 2 bedroom flats, 3 and 4 bedroom houses. This represents a 23.8% provision, exceeding the 20% required by planning policy. Affordable housing would be appropriately distributed around the site. The development's main open space will be provided at the site entrance of Tithe House Way, symbol A. Smaller spaces are proposed at the centre of each garden court and adjacent to 206 Bradley Park. Improvement works are proposed at Tithe House Way, Bradley Park Junction, involving the introduction of 2 pedestrian island refuges and amendments to junction radii. Some of these works will be necessary if the proposed development of the petrol station and convenience store comes forward first at the corner site adjacent to the junction. That application is currently in the system with the council. This is a 3D image of the Northwest Garden Court. This is a 3D image of the Northwest Garden Court looking south from the site's northern boundary. Contemporary designs are proposed, albeit with chimneys, pitched roofs and other references to local vernacular. Given the limited constraints at the site and the varied architecture nearby, it is considered that the site offers scope for non-traditional, playful design. This is a 3D image of the Southwest Garden Court looking southeastwards. The applicant proposes 2 and 3 storey dwellings. The proposed layout is well thought out, with perimeter block approach proposed. Residential amenity, flood routing, crime and antisocial behaviour, dementia-friendly design and other considerations have informed the layout. The development's largest open space would help the development sit comfortably within the context and would limit amenity impacts upon existing residents of Tithe House Way. The proposed development is a good example of how a site can be efficiently used in compliance with Local Plan Policy LP7. Taking into account the new roads that the site would need to deliver to facilitate future and adjacent development, a density of over 35 units per hectare would be achieved. Climate change considerations have informed various aspects of the proposed development, including in relation to encouraging the use of sustainable modes of transport and addressing the site's drainage. I'll now hand over to Steve Sampson to run through highway issues.
Through you, Chair, Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management. To summarise the highway section of the report and update, the proposed residential development, which forms part of a wider allocated development site, initially would be accessed from Tive House Way from its junction with the A6107 Bradley Road. Junction analysis has been carried out by the applicant's highways consultant, Local Transport Projects, and is considered acceptable with the development being served off the existing priority junction, albeit with the requirements of a junction radii being reduced slightly and 2 central islands being provided on Bradley Road. As the master plan is developed, Tive House Way will be widened to accommodate public transport and to provide a shared cycle footway and landscape verge to connect from Bradley Road, connecting to this development. The cumulative transport impacts of the development have been assessed with this application and the local plan infrastructure delivery plan, to which major highway scheme options at Cooper Bridge Junction are currently being reviewed. The internal layout, parking, turning and internal routes and circulation areas are considered acceptable. The submitted framework travel plan is considered acceptable at this stage and will require an arrangement to provide the Council's involvement and assistance in its development, maintenance and monitoring. Bus services operate on Bradley and Allendale Road and include the 328, which operates between Bradley and Huddersfield at a 10-minute frequency. In terms of transport-related development contributions, the development exceeds the KSEZ threshold of 9 two-way peak hour movements through the Cooper Bridge Junction and should provide a contribution of £173,272 to be pooled towards providing major transport infrastructure works. In addition, a bus shelter located on Bradley Road, number 26888, also requires upgrading to a shelter with real-time information, and a contribution to provide sustainable transport initiatives is required and would include residential metro cards. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. Flood risk is an issue at the site. Although the site is within flood zone 1, there is a risk of surface water flooding at the southern part of the site. To compensate for this, finished floor levels of units 1 to 13 have been adjusted. The applicant has also proposed, originally, pumping of surface water, which is not normally considered acceptable. The applicant has explored alternative solutions that would obviate the need for pumping. It is recommended that the resolution of these matters be delegated back to officers, although if the solution necessitates a significant amendment to the scheme, the application can be brought back to Strategic Committee for further consideration. Neighbour amenity impacts are also considered acceptable, although neighbouring residents have objected to the heights of some dwellings and their upper storey windows. The resultant relationships between existing and proposed dwellings would not be unusual, and additional spacing, in some cases greatly exceeding 21 metres between elevations, has been allowed for, including between units 1 to 13 and existing dwellings on Bradley Road, where a difference in levels would be created. The development's main open space would include a locally equipped area of play. As noted in the committee update, a further contribution towards open space would be required to make up for on-site shortfalls. This amount is £77,800. Various obligations will be required to mitigate the impacts of the proposed development, as the Council cannot enter into a Section 106 agreement with itself. It is recommended that a Grampian-style It is recommended that the future signing of the Section 106 agreement be secured by a Grampian style condition, similar to that used on other council-owned sites, one being Sut Hill. A total of 20 representations have been made. Concerns of local residents have been addressed by the proposed development by conditions and in the committee report. Subject to conditions, the proposal are considered to be sustainable development and approval of full planning permission is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Two speakers, Chair. We have Liz Jefferson, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. So my name is Liz Jefferson. I'm speaking on behalf of the council in its role as applicant and landowner. This application for Tithe House Way forms part of the larger strategic housing allocation for Bradley Park. The Tithe House Way element of the wider site had a long-standing allocation for residential development in the UDP, and officers began to work on proposals for this site in advance of adoption of the local plan. As part of the council's housing growth agenda, our ambition is to build 10,000 new homes in the district by 2023, including 1,000 homes on land currently owned by the council. The Tithe House Way site has the potential to provide new housing for which need exists across the district and make a significant contribution to the number of homes being built on council land. The designs for the Tithe House Way site have taken cognizance of the illustrative master plan for the wider site, which was approved by Cabinet, and the detailed approach for this site will be taken forward, taking account of Tithe House Way significance within the wider allocation. Members are therefore asked to support the application. Thank you.
We have Katrina Hulse, who's the agent.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the application. My name is Katrina Hulse from Cushman and Wakefield, and I act in the capacity of agent for the landowner. I'm a chartered town planner and qualified non-practising barrister. The application proposal is for 105 residential dwellings, including a mix of house types and tenures. The principle of housing on this site is long established through the UDP and now through the local plan allocation. Since our appointment in August 2018, Cushman and Wakefield and the design team has been working with the landowners, the local planning authority and statutory consultees to design a contemporary residential development within the not insignificant constraints that the site presents. We have undertaken public consultation with the local community, including a public exhibition held in October 2018, where we invited feedback on the proposals. Where appropriate, we have made amendments to the scheme to address some concerns or provided an explanation for the approach taken. Since the submission of the planning application, further work has been undertaken to address highways, drainage and biodiversity issues. Amendments have been undertaken to the design, and these changes have been subject to further public consultation, allowing stakeholders to comment on the revised proposals. Throughout the process, the applicant and their consultants have worked collaboratively with the LPA and technical officers to resolve issues and ensure that the proposed development represents an exemplar housing scheme. The application will provide the following benefits: market housing to contribute towards the identified housing needs of the district, a significant contribution towards affordable housing, the provision of on-site public open space and a LEAP, provision of a development that is accessible for all users of the site, a new sustainable community which provides opportunities for social cohesion, opportunities for local jobs during the construction phase, provision of training and apprenticeship opportunities, financial contributions towards primary school provision, enhancements to biodiversity, both on-site mitigation and through off-site compensation, improvements to drainage, opportunities for future decentralised energy provision, improvements to the highway junction, provision of good quality cycling and pedestrian routes throughout the development, high quality design that will create a distinctive development. The proposed conditions in Section 106 that future purchaser developers of the site will enter into should give the Council confidence that a high-quality residential development will be delivered on this site, which will set the standard for the remaining SUE. We trust that members will be able to support the case officer's recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Members, it's open to you.
Can we have an explanation of the drainage?
Yeah.
Raised this morning.
Yeah.
Parked on Tyne House Way and just had a look at the start.
Good afternoon. It's Paul Farndale from Kirklees Flood Management and Drainage. The whole site's had a master plan done by RES that develops the sort of theories of different watersheds catchment, of which this forms part of one of 3 watersheds. The drainage itself, in terms of the application, they've got permission by Yorkshire Water to connect to the public sewer network, but at a very limited allowance. Now, it does need a little bit more work on that. Subsequent to that, we have found a culvert on site that leads to an open pipe right in the bottom right-hand corner of Tyne House Way. It's about 12 inches in size. That means that the land drains to that system already. We can probably raise that discharge rate slightly, which will produce a smaller tank, and probably get rid of this pump station idea, which I would object to because I don't think they're a good idea. You should never pump surface what's the least sustainable method of drainage going. Hopefully, that if we can do that and liaise with the planning officers and reduce the tank size and the design somewhat when it comes back to us, if it comes back to us, we can then proceed without the pump station. But I'd like to see more detail of the actual design and work it through as to where the points of connection go. In terms of other aspects of trying to avoid pumping, I would be in favour of chasing down the sewer in terms of levels so we get a gravity connection. Again, I'd like to see more work done on that before making a decision myself in terms of advice. But we are at a position where I think we've done a significant amount of work already, including ourselves, to identify this. So I do believe we've got it so it's able to move forward. Like I said, we've got an initial one. The other aspect that I really want to emphasise is that there'll be other phases that also fall in this direction, and we must make provision for those now.
Chair, can I ask about the material they're going to use? Is a brick, it will be brick, will be used. Is the brick will be matching the brick? We have already got bungalows on the Bradley Road, yeah? But other side, on that this road, there are the artificial stone used. But this brick, I don't know what color is the brick will be there.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, there is a section in the report that covers materials. I'll try and guide you to it. But in that area, there is as you'll have seen, there is a mix of materials. And the properties on the southern side, on Bradbury Road, they are a mix of materials and different stone and different brick. The materials that are to the east, as you say, artificial stone. It is a contemporary design, and one of the reasons behind that is to get a good density, one that complies with the local plan. So I think it was considered that brick was an appropriate material. There will be variations in that into the different plots, but the use of brick has been stated. I'll just try and guide you to, there we are, 10.24. A variety of bonds and textures. In terms of roof materials, we've got diamond hanging tiles, standing seam zinc roofing. So there are contemporary materials there. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kane.
Thanks, Chair. I've quite a few comments to make, if you don't mind, and a couple of questions to be raised. Thanks, Paul, for the explanation. I think you're exactly right. I'm unsure as to whether, to be quite honest with you, we delegate that and it doesn't come back. I think it has got to come back, because if it's taking, is it 1,300 properties at some stage, that drainage has got to, we've got to make sure that this is correct, because this is the first part of this.
Yeah, overall, obviously, those will fall in different
Yeah.
directions, but this will be certainly got more on this first.
Yeah, but there may be some element that there's some interconnections between these two, the remainder of that site and whatever. So we need to ensure that this is going to be correct. I think something was said this morning. I was quite surprised, but I think you've answered it. Was really about the attenuation tanks are purely for the top water. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Right, thank you. That's okay. I think something was said to the contrary of that this morning. However, can I just pick on what Councillor Sokol has just said? I think it's a fantastic design, don't get me wrong. I have no problems with the design, and I think it's extremely contemporary and it'll fit in. Whether it fits in or not, it's a new design, should I say. But one thing I am sort of concerned of, and there is a couple of comments in there, and that is really about the roof type, to be quite honest. Raised seam roof seems more like an industrial roof rather than anything else. I certainly wouldn't want to see that in that location, and it's probably something that's been designed in either for to preserve heat or something, but definitely I wouldn't like to see that in that location. I think the comments that have been made by people within the report actually raise that as an issue, and certainly something we should be looking at. There's a couple of other things in there, and I'm quite surprised that we have got a contribution, and I've got to say all the contributions are fantastic if they come to fruition. But there's no contribution for a secondary school. I can't understand that we haven't how that calculation has been worked out. There must be a hell of a lot of provision that's there already that for us not to have a contribution for the secondary school. So I'd like a little bit of an explanation about that. With regard to the total contributions altogether, it has been suggested that obviously we cannot apply a 106. We can use the same structure as 106, but it's got to be done under Grampian, and that notoriously it's got to be extremely tight when the Grampian is signed, so that all the contributions are secure. Should this, and I'm sorry, Liz, I'd rather ask you this question. Is it our intentions to develop this site, or is it our for us to sell this site on?
So we're looking at procurement options, but obviously we don't want to preempt the outcome of the planning permission, councillor. I would imagine most of our developments we're doing with a third party, so those obligations which are on this permission we would have to pass on obviously to a developer through a development agreement.
Then I would suggest that these Grampians are absolutely cast iron tight, because when these are passed on, developers find every sort of way of getting out of these contributions. And I think that's another reason as for this to come back to committee, to be quite honest with you. If we need to ensure that the drainage is okay, and need to ensure that the Grampian is signed properly. I'm quite happy, and I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it's a fantastic actual site to be developed, and the contemporary design I like, apart from the roof. And there's absolutely no issues with it. I think everything we're getting out of it is what's required. But I just think that I'm not saying that it's being rushed. I'm not saying that at all. I think there's things that we need to put into there to ensure that this is a good development and we've got everything we can out of it. So I'm quite happy to move it, Chair, on that, as long as it's delegated to come back to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of the Climate Emergency Working Group, I feel it incumbent upon me to talk about what measures are being used to ensure good insulation. You know, to what level are these houses going to be built in terms of insulation and things like that? Is there going to be a possibility of having PV cells on the roof, for instance? And electric vehicle charging points are mentioned in the report, but it doesn't say how many. I think we have to ensure, particularly since it's our site, we have to ensure that as many things as possible that enable the stress on the planet, if I can put it as strongly as that, is minimised. That we have good insulation and therefore not using fuel unnecessarily. Similarly, I might also ask the question about the drainage provision. Has that been future-proofed to ensure that even allowing for the larger site feeding into the watercourse here, has that been dealt with in the same way? I'm certainly in support of the application because it's the start of what could be a really quite exciting development. I will second it, but I'd just like to know how we're kind of future-proofing the development.
In terms of drainage, future-proofing comes from the calculations that we'd start at least the 1 in 30-year storm event underground. But in Kirklees, we've been slightly hilly. You're supposed to keep the 1 in 100 on site. That tends to be that you can't do that on a sloping site, so you tend to put that in attenuation. But in terms of future-proofing it, there is a calculation for climate change, and it's a whacking 30% basically on top of that. So developers may wince at that, but that's what we adhere to in our local plan.
Sorry, just to come back, does this include increasing the size of drains, for instance, the diameter of drains?
Basically, they have to model with a 30% allowance for additional sort of intensity on rainfall.
Yeah.
Sorry, could I just ask Councillor King, you said you wanted to come back. The Grampian condition which we intend putting onto the permission enables the permission to be granted, but the Grampian says absolutely no development until a 106 has been entered into. What are you wanting to bring back? The 106? The Grampian... Yeah.
Sorry. I want it to be secure that no changes to the 106, the calculations that we've done under the 106s will be changed by any future developer.
It's absolutely no development commencing under the Grampian until we have a satisfactory 106 signed, and once it's signed, that's the contract.
With respect, Deborah, that's not really what I'm saying.
No, I just want to know what you want to bring it, what you want to look at when you bring it back.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. You're saying that you don't want a developer to be able to unpick what we've agreed today as the planning permission. Well, they can't unless they apply formally, and if they apply formally, it would come back to this planning committee. So under our so the answer is you have that comfort as a decision maker today. Any changes come back to you.
In other words, it's water
Well, it's transparent because if the permission is granted with the Grampian on no commencement of development until the 106 is signed. If it's signed and then they want to change something, then they've got to put another Section 73 application in. Yeah.
So we can adapt it for whatever happens. Is that what you're saying? No. If they want to change it, you might come back. Yeah, so it could be, absolutely, yeah. I can't disagree with that.
So, Chair, are you saying that the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the resolution of the drainage scheme. What we're saying to you is we're confident that we can get to that point. If the drainage scheme changes the plans in any way, shape or form, and we need to re-notify the neighbours, we'll bring that application back to you before the decision's issued. But if the drainage is resolved, as we think, we will issue the decision under today, under the delegation from today. Is that okay?
Should it be passed today?
Should you agree the recommendation? Absolutely, member.
So it's a drainage.
Carol.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on a couple of things that Paul said, but I'm quite happy with the zinc roofs. I think that is in keeping with the style of building that's being proposed. It may not be in keeping with the style of houses on Bradley Road, but it is and I presume that they are more future-proof and easier to insulate and all the rest of it. But just just a comment on the high schools. There are 3 with spare places currently within the vicinity, so I presume that's why it's not been mentioned.
That is the answer.
Andrew.
Do we have an answer to the other queries I raised about charging points and insulation and so on? Sorry.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, the point about charging points is not, the standard is 1 per dwelling. So there would be a charging point per dwelling. Apartment blocks, you would have a charger for a communal one. In terms of the sustainable construction, that is normally dealt with through building regulations, but you know, we can consider about maybe a condition.
We haven't got the building regs deal with the insulation of environmental buildings. The planning policy was changed several years ago to remove the ability to go beyond the building regulations as a planning permission. So there will be up to building reg standard. The developer can go beyond that if they choose, but as a decision maker, you can't resist development without, if you wanted them to go further and they said no. So you can only go to building regs, because that isn't what the planning decision cannot go past it. The regulations are very clear about that.
Right, any more questions? No? Well, it's been moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Kane. On the roof.
Can I just say, if we're going to do something bold and imaginative on our own sites, Bradley is a really good example of a location to do that. If the scale is right and you're comfortable that it fits in context, then being different, this is the right place to do it in my professional advice. But it is...
With respect, all I'm saying is that it is in the report that people are concerned about the look of it. It's been raised as an issue saying that they become industrial. Zinc roofing is extremely industrial, and I'm just raising that point. I'm not too precious about it myself. We're here to listen to the people and the surroundings. It's extremely subjective, is this, and I've no issues. I'm quite happy to support it either way. All I'm saying to you is, if these people are going to live there all the time, I'm not going to live there. You know, we're making a decision for their future more than anything else. If members are happy to do that, then that's fine. I've no problems.
Yeah, just sort of as a different sort of perspective, I think there's too much development currently that is very much the same thing over and over again. And I think having a design that's a little bit different, a bit more contemporary, and I think zinc roofs can look attractive on the right properties, and I think the design of these properties supports it. So I think it's a little bit, I think it's a good thing that the design's a little bit different, because it's just creating a little bit more variety in the environment.
I'm quite happy to We've lost the argument that time.
Right. Right. Okay. Right. So it's been moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Pinnock. Those in favour of this development at Bradley, please show.
Okay, that's unanimous.
That's
Chair.
unanimous, thank you very much. Next, we move on to page 39. This is land off Woodhead Road at Homley. That's Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Adam Walker, Senior Planning Officer. This is a position statement brought before the committee following a resolution to approve an application for 59 dwellings in January this year. The purpose is to give members an update on the progress with a Section 106 as well as in relation to drainage matters. Officers are seeking comments from members and agreement to grant officers more time to conclude the Section 106 negotiations. In terms of the detail of the application, just to give you a refresher if you like. This is the application site. It's off Woodhead Road in Honley. It forms part of a larger housing allocation. As I said, there was a resolution for 59 dwellings, and this was the layout. One of the requirements of the Section 106 was to secure a road right up to the eastern boundary of the site, which you can see on this plan, and that's to enable access to the remainder of the housing allocation, because the remainder is essentially dependent on getting access through this site. The delivery of the road is bound up with the Council's master planning policy, which is LP5, and the need to deliver development in a comprehensive manner. There have been somewhat protracted negotiations in relation to the timing of the delivery of this road. To assist with the negotiations, the Council has sought its own legal advice in relation to the master planning policy, and that was in the context of this particular site. That advice is summarised within the private paper that's been circulated to members. Officers now feel that an acceptable compromise has been reached in terms of the timing of the delivery of the access road. The agreed trigger is the 30th, well, no development beyond the 30th or plot 30, which, sensitive. Yeah, we can see plot 30 there, which is basically it's halfway through the development. So that's quite a bit earlier than what the applicant was originally proposing. They'd suggested the 47th dwelling, so they have come down a fair bit. But halfway into the scheme, there's enough incentive for the developer to continue with their build and thus deliver the access road, and the road would need to be made up to base course level. The developer has, however, asked that this agreed trigger could be amended slightly, and he's put that request to officers, and that's to allow them to build up to plot 33. And the reason for that is really from a phasing point of view. So I'll just zoom out. So they're wanting to build everything on this side of that red line, which is showing a footpath through the site. So from a kind of a practical point of view, they're wanting to do that. But we have got that agreement, and officers feel that up to plot 30 is acceptable, but members may take a different view on that. With regard to issues of land ownership and property rights, the conclusion in this case is that these could not be overridden by a Section 106 obligation that sought to grant public rights of access over the road. And so there will have to be some agreement between adjoining landowners to help deliver the entire allocation. In terms of other matters, acceptable provision has been made for the other requirements of the 106, namely education, affordable open space and sustainable travel. The resolution also required drainage details to be finalised before the decision is issued. The applicants provided details relating to the drainage design and flood risk matters. Lead Local Flood Authority is satisfied with the information subject to some clarification on flood routing and subject to conditions. Given where negotiations have reached, the question arising from this position statement is, do members have any comments in relation to the trigger for the provision of the access road? And as I said, officers are also seeking agreement to grant an extension of time to conclude negotiations on the 106. Thank you, Chair.
So over to you. Mohan.
Yeah, Chair. I'm looking into this report. Section 106 contribution, I think, is quite good. I agree with that. It should be. But only a question is, an off-site contribution, which is off-site play area, yeah? How far that would be there, where it will be? Is there any nearest children play area somewhere? I mean, the young people, young children should not walk miles away.
Shall I come back on that, Chair?
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. I think in this case, we will be looking for some, it will be off-site provision in relation to this site, but we'd be looking for some on-site provision as part of the overall housing allocation. So if something was coming forward as part of that scheme, then this scheme could contribute to it. But in terms of anything nearby, it'd be...
I mean, the parents who move in,
I mean, the council's got a play strategy. It's quite recently adopted, which sets out its approach to maintaining its existing facilities, the larger ones generally. So the strategy is to, on developments of this sort of size, if we take the contribution and improve existing parks, that keeps them open, keeps them going, keeps them sustained. The idea of having small play areas for children over the age of sort of 6 on site, that's gone really from planning design. We're sort of saying very small children, there's a bit of green space on site, parents can take their very small children to, but once they need a bit more stimulation of play equipment, we're putting that in money investment into our local parks. So that's the advice from our landscape team to take that. The developer was happy to make that contribution, so we've sort of haven't renegotiated that point. Our sticking point's been around the timing of the internal infrastructure roadworks with this one. That's why we're here and what ward members have asked us to look at. If that helps.
Paul.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy with that offsite. I don't think there's any issues with that. I think it's normal and it should really be spent very close to it, close to the application. But I'm quite happy with that. Adam, can I just ask you what is the main reason, do you think, for them not signing this 106? Because I'm quite happy with the cut-offs as low as possible, to be quite honest with you. You know, if we can put some pressure on these to sign these 106s, then that will be fine, as much pressure as possible. And the more you let them get away with it, the more they'll take it. So if it were going to be 20 odd, but I would do it at 20 odd. But if you were relaxed at being on plot 30, I'm quite relaxed for it to be on 30. But there must be a reason as to why they don't think they don't want to sign this 106.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, when the applicant first came in, they were wanting it they were wanting to build up to plot 46, and then they were saying they'd put the access road in and then do the rest of it. We felt that was too late in the build phase. It wouldn't give us a strong enforcement position. We wanted there to be sufficient incentive for them to carry on with the build and make sure that road was put in place. A couple of the arguments that they've put forward wanting to do it later, the fact that there's a lot of the affordable housing comes in the early part of the scheme, and the cost of putting that access road in off Woodhead Road is going to be significant. There's probably no two ways about that. So that's why they were proposing this later stage. But they've come down to something that we're happy with.
Sorry, Chair, are you quite happy then that if we go for that will be as far as that we can go? You're not going to be coming back again at a later period and asking for a further extension? Because I think, you know, enough is enough. I think if you want us to give you a message today to give back to the developer and say, look, this is as far as we're going to go. If you don't get these done, we'll start doing some enforcement. I think that's a issue that you can go back to, and that's a possible sort of outcome that you can go back to the applicants, because it's not acceptable to continue in this sort of nature. And I think I'm speaking for myself here. I don't think we need to extend anymore. Like if we say we finish at 30, that's it. Plot 30 is as far as we go.
Yeah, thanks for that message, because it is helpful, Chair, and members. It is helpful to know that when you grant a resolution to make a decision, we want the developer to comply with the terms and not revisit those. In this case, we're happy with 30. That's what the committee's happy with. Then that's what the agreement will be signed on. And if they don't, then it gets determined.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question really to Highways. The fact that on one occasion it was refused due to the access into Woodhead Road. Are we happy now with the new access into Woodhead Road? And is it going to be better? Because it is a very, very busy road, that, you know. Traffic, it's busy all day, and they do go down there excess speeds. So, you know, how are we going to try and get those vehicles into the road with a minimum problem?
Through you, Chair. This access point and arrangement has also been the preferred access arrangement. The previous proposal was for an additional access towards Holmfirth, which was refused and upheld at appeal. So this access arrangement provides a right turn lane, provides free-flowing traffic, it's got the right visibility, it's got pedestrian islands and such. So we just want one access serving both sites, not two accesses services.
Well, I did ask this question basically because I use sometimes Smithy Lane quite a lot, and as you know, that's a bit further up the road, and that can be very dangerous coming out of there, out of Smithy Lane, with the speed that kept cars travel up and down, you know, and we're talking about 59 properties with cars going in and out all day. So it's just a question of, you know, how safe is it, and is it likely to backfire on us? Have we done all our sums, crossed all the T's?
Through you, Chair, I believe we do know our sums. The junction you're questioning about Smithy Lane, we actually use as part of our defence for the appeal site. And I've sat there for a number of hours at Smithy Lane, so I know how the highway operates. I'm satisfied that this junction arrangement is to standard and provides all the necessary measures so it's safe and efficient.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. A different highways query. I don't know whether we've had this drawing before, but even if we have, are we happy with the bend immediately after the junction, and also the bend on the southern part of the site where it goes round? Particularly, and I know this isn't part of the current application, but particularly in relation to the fact that that access is for the rest of the site as well. So there will be quite a lot of traffic using roads with two relatively sharp bends on them. I mean, I guess they're within the design guides, but is this the right way to go about it? I put it sort of fairly bluntly. because it looks to me as though those bends could, on occasions, cause an issue. People going too fast and so on.
Through you, Chair. There have been several iterations of this layout. Due to the topography and the drop in the gradient of this site, you can't come in off Woodhead Road perpendicular straight down into the site. The gradients would be far too deep. So we've had to tack around. There is localised widening on the bends, and our Section 38's adoption section are satisfied that it meets guidelines. Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions? No? Well, it's been moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Soap. Those in favour? Please show.
It's a position
Sorry,
statement, but
I'm clear who's voting. We just, did you put your hand up or not? I'm not sure what was...
Sorry, Chair, I'm just querying whether we need to take a vote on it, because it's we're asked for with other position statements.
we don't need to vote, but
If you're satisfied that the position we've negotiated recently to arrive at 30 dwellings before and then the access road has to be available, they have to do the land deal, but the physical works will be done by that time, then we'll go away and complete the Section 106 on that basis. So I think that's just to be noted.
Well, yes, I agree.
You're okay with it then?
Yeah.
Right. Good up. Page 47 next. Sorry. Low Mill Lane, Ravensthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. So this is one of the site visits from this morning. The application's before committee because of the size of the site. The proposal is for change of use of a vacant piece of land to container and vehicle storage, plus the erection of a fence. The site's an area of grass and hard standing located within a commercial area, although there are some houses close by to the northwest, which I tried to point out on the visit this morning, and to the southwest as well, just on the opposite side of the canal. The site's straddled by the canal to the south and Low Mill Lane to the north, and Ladywood Way lies to the east. The site forms part of a larger priority employment area as designated in the local plan, and that extends up here and down to the south as well on the other side of the canal. The proposed site plan, which is just here, shows the containers being in the northern part of the site, which is, I think the bus was parked somewhere around here today. So containers along that frontage. The vehicle storage will be in the middle part of the site, and then you've got an existing tarmac and turning area in the southern part of the site. Containers, got typical detail supplied, about 6 metres long, 2.4 metres high. They'll be used to store clean and dry vehicle parts that will be sealed and contained. And the applicant has confirmed that this is not to be a breaker's yard. The fence, some typical detail of it there. It's dark green mesh security fence, and that will be all around the site periphery. They've also submitted a landscaping plan with some landscaping proposals. This includes a landscape bund, which you can see just here, to the canal. And that will be planted up with some specimen trees, so that's a welcome feature to help screen from the water side. Turning to the principle of development, it's an employment generating use within a priority employment area, so it's consistent with the designation. The applicant's indicated to be 3 full-time and 2 part-time staff employed. It would also bring a vacant piece of land back into productive use, so taking this into account, officers support the principle. In terms of visual amenity, the site forms part of a commercial area, and so in general terms, the presence of containers and vehicles would not be out of keeping. Having said that, it is felt that some additional screening should be provided to Low Mill Lane to screen these containers. So that could be some soft landscaping behind the fence, for example, and a condition is recommended to that effect. An additional condition is also recommended, preventing containers being stacked on top of each other, as we discussed this morning. Screening is provided to the canal side, as I mentioned. The houses that are quite close by are reasonably well separated from the container storage area. There is a potential for some noise to affect these residents, and the conditions recommended restricting the hours of use. Chair, you mentioned how that sat with some of the other businesses in the area. There's this area that's the Ravensthorpe Industrial Estate. There's a permission in 98, and that had a very similar restriction in terms of operating hours. Highways consider the application acceptable, subject to conditions. Flood risk, drainage and ecology issues have all been addressed to the satisfaction of relevant consultees, and they're discussed in the report. There have been no public objections, and officers have concluded that the application is in accordance with relevant policies and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adam. Members? Pretty straightforward, I think. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Sokol, seconded by Councillor Fair. Those in favour? Kill. 7 no. Page 7. Snittle Road, Haydage, of the
Thank you, Chair. My name is John Ritchie, I'm a planning officer. This application was deferred at the previous meeting. This application was deferred at the previous meeting to address questions raised by members. These are listed and addressed in the report and your update, including drainage calculations, details of the management company responsibilities, timing of completion, the land restoration scheme, and details of publicity. Members will note additional comments from Councillor Patrick and a letter from the public in the update. Members are also advised, given their concerns about drainage at the last meeting, that the Council's drainage officer, Paul Farndale, is in attendance to answer any questions. The site lies to the rear of residential development currently being progressed off Dunford Road and Snittle Road. Sorry, I'm going to get the next one.
Sorry, John.
Sorry.
You got it?
Yeah. Sorry. So, full planning permission is applied for 2 surface water soakaway basins with an access track to drain the majority of the highway network from the residential development. The dwellings themselves are on soakaway systems within each property. Excuse me. The site was previously open grassland and is partly used now as a construction compound. And the proposal is to landscape the area upon completion. The proposal is an alternative to a scheme agreed at the planning application stage, which is for 6 concrete ring soakaway chambers to the right of the development, as shown by the 6 blue dots. The photos of the site were displayed at the previous meeting, and they are available for members' information, as are the photographs accompanying the public objection, should they require them. The proposal is for sustainable drainage, which is the preferred method of drainage in the local plan and national planning policy, and is required by a condition of the planning permission. The site is in Greenbelt, but the development would be appropriate development within the Greenbelt. And as the report recommends, we recommend that approval subject to delegation to officers to resolve conditions and a legal agreement to secure future maintenance. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Committee, it's over to you. Councillor Firth.
This was something that I brought forward some months ago regarding the drainage at Aid Edge, and also it was regarding the drainage at Moorlands at Scholes. Both sites were in a high water table. In other words, the water table on both sites where those properties are being built is full. Can't get any more water in there, it's full. We know this from Moorlands because their soakaways, after heavy rain, to pump them out within 24 hours of the heavy rain. Soakaways were supposedly would last about 9 years. And I remember talking to a well-known builder, a local builder in my area, who said soakaways was a cheap way of getting rid of surface water. And it obviously is proving that now with all the water we get. Now, I haven't had anybody ringing me, but I went on my own volition, having spoken with Nigel Patrick, both of us are in the same agreement. I was up there at the weekend, and I've got to say, after all that rain, there was more water in Sticklegate running into the road and off that land than I've ever seen before. And also on checking, the football field, Aid Edge AFC, they've had to postpone a number of games when the heavy rain's been there because it's flooded. It's never flooded before, it's flooding now. And also a friend of mine who was a local farmer, his tractor shed was full after one set of heavy rain. It was 3 foot deep in his shed. He'd never had any water in that shed before. So there's something not right. I did suggest piping the surface water across the road into Beaushaw Wams Reservoir. It's not a drinking water reservoir, it sails boats and it has fishing. It would have been an ideal situation to get rid of the water onto there. You'd have cured everything. Now we've got, I think we've got a couple of big holes built, dug there, 20 foot deep. You know, they've gone overboard on it because they know full well if they don't, there's going to be a problem. Those will fill up in quick sticks. And before you know where you are with the water we're getting nowadays, the heavy rains that we're getting, we need to address all these situations and adapt. And the only way I can see adapting is either tanking or if there's a reservoir nearby, pump the water in or get rid of the water into there. You don't have to pump it. Water flows downhill, and it's a downhill run into the reservoir anyway. And also, you know, you've got to remember this. It's not going to get any better, apparently. We've signed up to this global warming situation. I think we should adhere to it and look for other ways of getting rid of the surface water. It's not good just keep digging big holes in the ground to find in about 6 months' time it's full again. And everybody's got underwater, as they were at Moorlands at Scholes. All the gardens were full of water. Children's play area had 3 foot of water in it. Never had water in it before. So there's got to be some common denominator, and it's the fact that we aren't getting rid of the water properly. Jones Homes did a site at Netherthong. They tanked that water into the nearest river. They've never had any problems. It costs a little bit more to tank it, but it's done with when it's finished. So that really, that's the reason I'm sat here now saying, oh, and there's just another thing, all those people in Aid Edge, including Aid Edge AFC, was supposed to be lettered. A letter was supposed to be sent to everybody. I got to tell you, nobody got a letter. There was nothing, which is not very good, is it? When nobody gets a letter, you know, stating what's going on. They were waiting for one, but it's the football club and those houses around the bottom end where the flood water is. And there is a lot of water. I do not exaggerate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I tended to agree with what Councillor Firth is saying, so I think it would be helpful if we could have a professional opinion and also an opinion as to whether Yorkshire Water will approve of water being put into their reservoir, assuming it is their reservoir.
It's private.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, I just reiterate what John says, that we've already approved Soakways in the site for houses and highways. It's just for a proportion of the highways. They want to do it in a slightly different way. They want to soak it away in a slightly different manner. I have seen the photographs supplied by Herdedge FC. I just think a little reality check, if you don't mind, Chair, that if you're going to take photographs on the day that we had national flood warnings for the whole of the country, you're going to see a few puddles. You're going to see a few puddles, whether it's in Herdedge, Lindley, John O'Groats or Land's End. However, there was one pertinent photograph that I think we should take very seriously, and it's something that I've chatted about with Councillor Firth before. When we look at Soakways, I'll get onto this in a minute, when we look at Soakways, the first thing that we would do as a desktop exercise is look at the British Geological Survey, who split the country up into 4 categories. And it's a broad sort of, they're not homing in on an individual site, it's a broad area. And there's about a 700 metre stretch here that's category 1, and I'll just read that out to you. It's highly compatible for infiltration suds, and this is the key word, and the subsurface is likely to be suitable for free drainage. Now that doesn't give us carte blanche to just say it's going to work. We'd expect the developer to do testing on any site. In fact, we're obliged as a planning authority through Eric Pickles' House of Commons written statement that's now embedded in National Planning Policy Framework to push sustainable methods of drainage. In terms of Soakways working, there's a big difference between Kent and Kirklees. Kent probably won't have much worry about Soakways because of the nature of the substrata there. It's going to go away. In Kirklees, we've got a lot of clay soils, we've got a lot of steep-sided slopes, and in fact, I could probably dismiss 90% of Kirklees for Soakways just at my desk, if I'm honest with you. However, this is an area where I cannot do that, and they should be testing for that. So we've taken the British Geological Survey. What happens next is that Jones Homes will dig holes and just do a straightforward Bowser test and see if water soaks. If it doesn't move, we're just going to move on and look at perhaps other methods of disposal. When it does appear to soak away, we'll then home in on the areas where soakaways are going to be positioned. Now, I've just counted them. There's 33 test locations on that site. We get them to repeat consecutively to mimic what a saturated substrata would be. So you've got 90 odd successful tests of soakaways. I cannot ignore that on a whim. They work. It soaks away in the substrata. Simple as that. They've proved it. Where I think the problem is, and we've had it on several sites, including the one at Scholes, is that when you soil strip the site and you're running it over with vehicles and you're compacting the surface strata and you do not put in methods, which they were supposed to do, by the way, on this site because we've got a condition that allows for bunding and stopping runoff, and it was exactly the story of the farmer getting flooding where it was appeared that they didn't put the bunds up there. If we get rain like we did the other day on a strip site, it's going to run off and it's going to run downhill, like Councillor Firth says. And we do take this very seriously. In fact, the Environment Agency have got involved on a site in Lindley and prosecuted, and the developer in Kirklees was fined, I think it was £180,000, so not an insignificant amount. So I think there's a huge difference between not managing your site successfully, perhaps allowing sediment and building materials into these soakaways, and the actual theory that soakaways work or don't work. I would have some sympathy with people that saying they work for 9 years or they have a limited amount of time, because the maintenance of soakaways is actually the key to whether they work. So we've got the theory done on this site. It comes into the practice it comes into the cleanliness and site management, and it comes into the management of the soakaways after Jones Homes have vacated site, which is why it's imperative, and National Planning Policy Framework now brings it in, that we've got to, as a local planning authority, ensure the maintenance and management of all sustainable drainage features for the lifetime of the development, which is why it's embedded in a Section 106 document. And Jones Homes have come up with a maintenance plan. It's vitally important because the house soakaways, which we've approved, are shared. You see, you don't want one person to be spending money on cleanliness and the next person not to be bothered. In terms of what we're trying to do today, it's a highway soakaway, so you've actually got Kirklees Council helping to maintain the soakaways, and we are obviously accountable for our own drainage.
I think it always surprises me when we start and talk about the redesign of everything again when it's been deferred. We asked for questions, we got the answers are there. We can't do anything about this now. Things are happening. This obviously sympathy for the issues that happen, but as Paul's saying, it happens on a fairly regular basis. Sometimes, this rainfall nowadays is not what it used to be, and we've got to do as much as we can. I think what Paul's just said is exactly right. If we've got a maintenance agreement or a service agreement or something like that with them that's put in the 106, we just try to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do. We're only here to actually the change of design, and we asked the questions last time. We didn't have all the information. The information's been provided. We should be saying yes to this straight away. I don't think there's an issue. I really don't think there's an issue with this. And as I say, all the sympathy goes out with. We'll try as best to mediate and remediate some of the issues, but we've gone as far as we can go now. We've given planning permission for this application. So I'll move it, Chair. I'm quite happy to move it.
The only sort of concern that sort of jumped at me when you were sort of describing the trial pits that were being dug and the 90 odd that were dug to be successful was I'd be curious as to whether or not the tests of the soakaway were done at a selection of different times of year, because obviously the water table varies depending on when in the year you do it, particularly obviously in the back end of winter the water table is going to be much higher than it is at this time of year. So if you dug a load of trial pits in the next couple of months, you might find them very successful. Then equally, if you dug them in March and April, you might find that the water table's a lot higher. So I'd be curious as to whether or not they are tested at different times. And also, I am sort of conscious that water tables are not necessarily fixed. Depending on the broader geology of the area, water tables can go up and down. Indeed, if you do too much extraction, they can lower. If you put too much water into them over time, they can raise. But then, I suppose in theory, the water that was there previously was all going to the area anyway, so they're not going to likely to get higher, I would suspect, unless there's additional water being put into that immediate area. But then you could end up with localised rising of the water table in given areas where the soakaway is, for example, particularly in the places where you've put them. So over time, you could end up with a build-up of water in there, and you don't know what the wider geology is doing. So my concerns would be, is the test being done extensively to the extent that it's not just a developer playing lip service to it to try and ensure that they're successful, and is it being robustly tested by people who really are sort of authorities on the subject for the longer term?
Through you, Chair. Yes, there are seasonal testing. They have to follow a process called BRE Digest 365. That's what building control will use. They have to follow the procedure in that. You do have borehole analysis also on site. They've got to report where they encounter water tables. We are sandstone here, which relies basically on fissures and weathering. You would suspect that the water table is going to be nowhere near on that one. They can only do what is reasonably practical. Now, if that's seasonal testing in one position in over 2 or 4 tests in a year, and doing 3 consecutive tests for each test, I don't see how they could do any more.
So they have been doing one, 2, 3 tests?
Yes, absolutely.
I hear what everybody's saying, but again, I've just heard what Paul said about varying areas in the country. Yes, there are varying areas in the country where they do work well. I can give you one area where they do work well. Yorkshire Dales, limestone. It's limestone, it just absorbs it, it's gone. But where we are, we've got a lot of heavy clay. I know, because our farm were all clay. You went down about 3 foot and it was just heavy clay. That turns, it's a barrier against water. So, you know, I haven't brought this to the council just for the sake of it. Believe me, the people in Aid Edge aren't happy, and if they're not happy, I'm not happy. And I really, you know, if there's another way around it, I would say, you know, there's a reservoir not half a mile away, which is just used for sailing boats and fishing. There wouldn't be a problem. You could pipe it in there, you wouldn't have a minute's problem. But you've got all these houses and probably more to come. And then when we do get floods, I've learnt a lot about floods because I happen to be on the Environment Agency Committee, and I've learnt a lot about flooding, a lot about everything to do with heavy rainfall. And it's amazing what I didn't know. And I do know now, and I've got to say that once you've committed yourself to these soakaways, we're stuffed with them. And if you get floods, who's going to stand up and say, yeah, it was my fault? Nobody. This is the whole thing. I haven't brought this to this council just for the sake of it. I brought it because, to my way of thinking, it's important. And when I saw it over the weekend, it was necessary. The water wasn't going anywhere, apart from into the football field, down Snittlegate and into the main road. Muddy water. Simple as that. And they've had to postpone a few games of Aid Edge AFC, both practice games and main games, because of flooding in that football field, which never took place before. I rest my case.
I mean, I can only reiterate about what compacted surfaces on building sites. If anybody's been on building sites, they're not really pleasant places to work. But I think there's a really important point if we just want to look past the testing that's being carried out. We have got a precedent here. I don't know if you've got a wider map there, John, but this site, front Stumford Road, at the opposite side, roughly the distance between myself and Councillor Kane, now we have 3 estates that have been built for 25 years, Abbey Close, Abbey Court and Green Abbey, that are all drained by soakaway with no reported problems.
It's just a small point, but Councillor Firth touched on this, and so has Paul Farndale. It's to do with the maintenance of the soakaways and how important that is. Is there any way we can condition that? I think I perhaps know what the answer might be, but it does seem to me that we need to ensure that the means of getting rid of surface water, and it's surface water that's the problem. How do we ensure that the soakaway continues to do what it's supposed to do during its design life, which may be 9 years, it might be longer, but that does seem to me to be important.
Through you, Chair, that really is the purpose of the proposed Section 106 agreement, which the developer has indicated a willingness to enter into. So that would cover the future maintenance.
If I may, Chair, it's actually it's not just a two-liner. But they've got to come up with an actual maintenance plan that goes into that agreement. I shall do this at this point 3 times a year, yeah, etc., etc.
Against? 2 against.